Ancient Rome, a city of eternal grandeur and mythical splendor, stood as a testament to the power of gods and mortals alike. Its towering structures, like the majestic Colosseum and the awe-inspiring aqueducts, rose towards the heavens. Beneath the cerulean sky, the city's cobblestone streets whispered tales of triumph and treachery. At the heart of this sprawling metropolis lay the Pantheon, where people offered their prayers and tributes. Amidst this ageless backdrop, Gaius Julius Caesar contemplated his destiny. The sweltering heat of March made the city of Rome restless. March, a month of Mars, the god of war. Mars made Caesar victorious. Jupiter gave him supremacy and authority. "I am the son of gods," he thought to himself. A divine figure amidst mortals, destined for eternity, he stood in the heart of Rome, sensing the pulse of the city, indeed the very life force of the entire Roman Republic, as if he could feel the ebb and flow of existence, joy and betrayal coursing through the urban landscape, much like the circulation of life's essence in the veins of humanity. His regal toga draped over his broad shoulders. Caesar's piercing eyes scanned the cityscape that sprawled beneath him. The grandeur of Rome stretched as far as the eye could see. He was the sun, and Rome revolved around him. At his side stood his wife, Calpurnia, a woman of rare beauty and intelligence. Her dark hair cascaded like a waterfall of midnight silk, framing a face that had seen both joys and sorrows. Calpurnia was the tether to Caesar's humanity, a reminder that even gods must share their lives with mere mortals. As they stood together atop the Palatine Hill, her hand gently gripped his arm, her touch grounding him in the midst of his soaring ambitions. The massive dome of the Pantheon, a remarkable display of Roman engineering and spiritual devotion, loomed before them. It housed statues and altars dedicated to the gods, each one a symbol of the power and influence that religions held in the empire. But today, the gods themselves seemed to pale in comparison to Caesar. He stood on the shoulders of gods, and for few moments it felt like the whole world could fit in the palm of his hand. However, these moments of euphoria and supremacy were fleeting. He turned his gaze away from the Pantheon, his thoughts drifting to the Senate, a place where the real power of Rome lay. It was there that the whispers of conspiracy had reached his ears. Senators, once his allies, now plotted against him, their jealousy and fear fueling a deadly ambition. I, Gaius Julius Caesar, conqueror of Gaul and Britain, the man who crossed the Rubicon, must I fear the mere mortals, men who spend their lives talking and scheming? Caesar exclaimed, his voice tinged with a mixture of arrogance and frustration. Calpurnia's eyes, filled with concern, met his. "Beware the Ides of March," she cautioned, her voice soft and pleading. "The debts of Rome are settled on this day, but it may also be a day of reckoning for you." Caesar's brow furrowed as he contemplated his wife's words. He did not want to run and hide like a hunted animal. He was the invincible general who had crushed his enemies. He was a ruler who extended the Rome's borders beyond the known horizons. He could not cower in the face of a handful of petty conspirators. Yet a nagging doubt gnawed at his conscience. He remembered the dreams that had haunted his sleep, the foreboding visions of his own death. Calpurnia's warnings echoed in his mind, mingling with his own inner turmoil. "What would you have me do, Calpurnia?" he asked, his voice softer now, touched by vulnerability. She reached out and caressed his cheek, her touch soothing. "You are a lion among sheep, my love," she said, her eyes filled with love and worry. "If they seek to harm you, then meet them with the strength of a lion. Do not let their treacherous schemes go unpunished." Caesar nodded, his resolve hardening. He would not be a lamb led to slaughter. He would confront the conspirators head-on, for he was a man of divine ambition who wielded God-given powers. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the city, they made their way back to the Grand Palace. The opulence of their surroundings spoke of the power they held. Yet in the quiet moments that followed, as they sat together in their private chambers, the weight of their world pressed upon them. Caesar's mind churned with thoughts of the Senate, of the men who sought to betray him. He could hear the whispers of ambition and envy that had seeped into the heart of Rome. The city itself seemed to pulse with a dark energy, a reflection of the treacherous undercurrents that threatened to consume him and rip apart all he had built. Calpurnia, sensing her husband's inner turmoil, drew him close, her arms wrapping around him in a comforting embrace. "Remember, my love, that even gods must face their own mortality," she whispered. Caesar rested his head against her shoulder, the weight of his pride and ambition finally giving way to the realization of his humanity. In the twilight of the evening, he found solace in the arms of the woman who had always been his anchor, his reminder that even in the grandeur of Rome, they were but mortals. The following morning, the Roman capital was bathed in a gentle golden glow, illuminating marble and travertine structures with the morning sun's radiant beams. Julius Caesar stood resplendent in his crimson toga, a symbol of his power and authority. His departure from the palace was a solemn one, for neither he nor his wife Calpurnia could foresee that this would be their final parting. As he embraced Calpurnia, he could feel the weight of her concern. Her dark eyes, filled with love and apprehension, searched his. "Remember, my love," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Remember that you are mortal." The words hung in the air, a reminder of the fragility of life, a stark contrast to Caesar's belief in his own divinity. He kissed her forehead gently, savoring the warmth of her embrace. "I will return victorious," he vowed, his words carrying the weight of both promise and uncertainty. With a heavy heart, Caesar left the palace behind, accompanied by his Praetorian Guard, a formidable display of his authority. The guards, clad in their polished armor, marched in disciplined formation, a stark contrast to the chaotic intrigue that awaited them in the Senate. As they walked through the grandeur of Rome, its majestic architecture stretched towards the heavens, marble columns and intricate facades adorned every corner, its wealth and power on display for everyone to see and admire. Caesar's thoughts, however, remained anchored to his final moments with Calpurnia. His mind wandered back to the day of his triumph, a pageantry of glory and adulation that had swept him through the streets of Rome. He had ridden in a golden chariot, his head and body anointed with luscious oils and scents, his golden armor glistening in the sun, a conqueror of lands and men. On that day, as thousands of people shouted his name, he had felt invincible, the most important figure in the world. Yet the memory of the slave holding a laurel crown over his head and whispering, "Memento mori," remember, you must die, lingered like a haunting refrain. It was a reminder that even the mightiest of men must eventually face their mortality. But as he walked through the city streets on this fateful morning, the roar of Rome's adulation and the memory of his triumph drowned out the slave's warning. To enter the Senate with his Praetorian Guard was an acknowledgement of his vulnerability, a concession that he, too, was a mortal who feared the treachery of other men. Caesar halted abruptly, dismissing his guards with a wave of his hand. He no longer required their protection. The eyes of Rome may have been upon him, but he was determined to confront the senators directly. The grandeur of the Roman Senate came into view, a magnificent structure that housed the heart of political power. Its marble columns and intricate carvings told stories of centuries of rule and governance. As he approached its entrance, he clenched his jaw and took a deep breath, knowing that whatever transpired within those hallowed walls would shape the course of history and determine his destiny and that of Rome. As he entered the Senate, the tension was palpable from the start. A thick fog of uncertainty hung heavy in the air. As he walked across the Senate floor, Caesar's footsteps echoed in the vast chamber. He took his seat, an ornate chair that spoke of authority and dominion, all the while aware of the eyes upon him. From his vantage point, he observed the assembly, some faces familiar, some less so. Among them were his allies, Mark Antony and Marcus Junius Brutus, men he believed he could trust with his life. But Caesar also saw the others, senators who spoke honeyed words but harbored venom and spite beneath their masks of civility. The tension continued to build, a storm that threatened to break at any moment. Various senators rose to their feet, making speeches accusing Caesar of wielding too much power. Their voices echoed in the grand hall, and some senators cheered, their voices filling the room with a cacophony of discontent. Still, Caesar remained unmoved, a pillar of stoic resolve. He knew the words he intended to speak when it was his turn, words that would cut through the tension like a blade. As the session unfolded, the Senate grew increasingly rowdy, like a tempest gathering strength. Suddenly, after another rancorous speech had sent the Senate into a frenzy, Gaius Cassius Longinus and Decimus Junius Brutus Albinus began to make their way towards Caesar's seat, followed by Marcus Junius Brutus, Caesar's ally. Others rose from their seats, joining the swelling mob that bore swords hidden beneath their garments. Caesar's facade began to crack, his sense of invincibility crumbling before the chaos. He rose from his seat, determination etched on his face, ready to confront the senators. But it was too late. In the midst of the tumult, a storm of blades descended upon him. The room echoed with the clash of steel, and Caesar felt the searing pain of betrayal. His eyes locked with those of Marcus Junius Brutus, the man he had trusted implicitly. "Et tu, Brute," he whispered in disbelief, the words a bitter acknowledgement of the ultimate betrayal. As darkness closed in, Caesar, wounded and dying, pulled his toga over his head. Even in death, he clung to the delusion of his divinity, unwilling to reveal his vulnerability to the world. The Senate chamber, with all its grandeur and corruption, had become his final battleground, where the clash between grandeur and mortality had played out in a tragic and bloody spectacle. In his final moments, as darkness closed in, Caesar's thoughts turned to his wife Calpurnia, the symbol of his humanity. But the love he felt for Rome, the city that had both adored and betrayed him, eclipsed all else. In the end, it was Rome that held his heart until its last resounding beat.